Sorry it took me so long to get back to your questions. I was really busy last week, but I did answer a lot of them in the comments section, so check there if I responded there. But these I thought I really needed to do a video because, like, take this first one here from Mike. So this is for the EM10 Mark II, and it looks like you were trying to program Mysets to the mode dial. And for each Myset, you wanted the red record button to be a different button function rather than record. So for example, you wanted Myset 1 to be, say, custom white balance, Myset 2 to be HDR, and Myset 3 to be something else, etc. But the problem you're having, it looks like, is when you change from, say, Myset 1 to Myset 2 on the mode dial, the function buttons are not changing. So the record button doesn't change. It stays to whatever the last thing it was set to. And that is the case. Uh, there is kind of a workaround, but it's not really worth it. But I'll show you how to do that. All right, so I'm going to show you on the E-M5 Mark II, but it's functionally the same on the E-M10 Mark II. And I've done a full reset on this camera, so we're going to be starting from scratch. So what I'm going to do first is just set up 3 Mysets in different modes and color profiles and change the record button to be a different function for each Myset. So let's go into the super control panel, and you can see I'm in aperture priority. So we'll leave this on natural, and we'll go to the function button here. And this is just a shortcut to the button function menu. And we'll go down here to the record button, and we'll change it from record to, say, you want it to be one touch white balance. Okay, and then let's go ahead and save that into Myset 1. So now we're set. And then let's go back to the super control panel, and let's make this monochrome. And we'll change the function button from one touch white balance to, say, HDR, like that. And then let's go to reset Myset, and we'll assign that to Myset number 2. And then we'll do something a little radical here. Well, not radical, but we'll just put it in shutter priority mode. And then let's go into the super control panel, and we'll just use one of these art filters, maybe pinhole. And then let's go to the button function, and we're going to change this from HDR to, let's say, bracketing. Okay. Now, these are all saved. I'm sorry, let's go back to the reset Myset and save that into Myset 3 and set. So now we have Myset 1, 2, and 3 all set. Now, let's assign the Mysets to the mode dial like you did. So we're going to go back into the menu, go down here to the button menu, and go in the button dial menu, and we're going to go to mode dial function, click OK here. And so for Myset 1, we'll just assign that to iAuto. Myset 2, we'll assign that to Art. Myset 3, we'll assign that to Scene. And we're all done there. So in theory, what should happen is, when I change this mode dial to iAuto, this should be Myset 1. And if you look down here, it does say Myset 1, aperture priority, natural color profile, but the function button did not change. It's on bracketing when this should be one touch white balance, right? So if we go to Myset number 2, we had programmed that to be HDR. So clearly you can see here it says we're in Myset number 2. So we did recall monochrome, but the function button is still set to bracketing. And then Myset number 3 is scene mode. So we're clearly in Myset number 3. And this, remember, we changed to shutter priority. So it did all of that. It also recalled the art filter. But the bracketing button we did assign to be, or the record button we did assign to be the bracketing in Myset 3. But it didn't change to bracketing. It was already on bracketing to begin with. And then changing back to, Myset number 1, you can see we're back in aperture priority. we're back to natural color profile, but the function button does not change. And when you look in the user manual, it says you can assign function buttons to the Myset. So what is the problem here? Well, apparently, when you assign Mysets to the mode dial, the only thing it recalls is everything but the function buttons. So to recall the function buttons, because maybe you programmed a bunch of different things to your function buttons, not just the record button. What you need to do is go into the menu, go into the Reset Myset, then click OK here and say yes to recall those settings. And now if we look, you can see that it's now the one-touch white balance. And if I go into the menu, Reset Myset, and recall Myset number 2, remember we set this to be monochrome HDR. So let's see what happened. So yeah, we got monochrome HDR aperture priority. But then this is where you run into another confusing problem. So that's why I did this. Let's go to Myset number 3 and recall this one. Because Myset number 3, remember, we set it to be shutter priority, art filter, and I think it was magnify. So we do have the art filter set there. So you can see though, we're still in aperture priority, but it recalled the art filter and it recalled the function button, but it did not change the picture mode from aperture priority to shutter priority. And in fact, it still says Myset 1 here. And that's because the mode dial is physically on what we changed to be Myset 1. And this is where the confusion occurs. So whatever mode you program the Myset to, so in this case we programmed Myset 1 and Myset 2 to be aperture priority. Whenever we put the mode dial in Myset 1 or 2, which is iAuto and art, these are going to be aperture priority. You cannot change the picture mode. But when we go into scene mode, or this is Myset number 3, you'll notice that it did recall shutter priority, recall the art filter and the bracketing button. However, if I'm in this mode and I recall Myset number 1, what it's going to do is bring back the natural color profile and the custom white balance function button. Right? So look here. See, natural color, but it did not change the mode from shutter priority back to aperture priority. And that's because we've basically baked in shutter priority into this mode position, aperture priority in this one, and this one. So Myset 1 and 2 are baked in aperture priority, and Myset 3 is baked in shutter priority on the mode dial. This always takes precedence over whatever you have in the Mysets. And then let's just go to aperture priority and try and recall a Myset here. So currently we are in art mode with one-touch white balance. Reset Myset. Let's recall number 1, which was what? Natural color profile and one-touch white balance. And as you can see, it did bring back natural, one-touch white balance, aperture priority. Let's recall Myset number 2, which was also aperture priority, but it was monochrome and HDR. So you can see we got monochrome HDR, aperture priority. But if we recall Myset number 3, what do you think is going to happen? We're going to get the art filter that you can already see here, and we're going to get the I forget the new function button, which was what? Oh yeah, bracketing. So art filter bracketing, but it did not change the mode to shutter priority because the mode dial is in aperture priority. So for the same reason, the mode doesn't change because of we're in a hard A here. It's not going to change when we go into these either. So I hope you're able to follow along, because I know I went through that pretty quickly, but I know you've already seen my other video on how to set up the Mysets to begin with. But there's primarily 2 things you need to look out for. Whenever you program a Myset to a position on the mode dial, and you turn that mode dial to that position, it's going to recall everything except for the function buttons. The function buttons are going to remain whatever they were last set to. And then to recall the actual function buttons that you programmed for that particular Myset, you have to go into the menu and recall it directly from the Myset menu. Now, for those of you that have newer camera models like the EM5 Mark III, the Pen F, the EM1 Mark II, EM1 Mark III, OM1, the cameras that have a C on the mode dial like C1, C2, C3, C4, when you put the mode dial into C1, 2, 3, or 4, it'll actually recall all the function buttons as well. So you don't have to kind of do this workaround that we're doing with the E-M5 Mark II and the E-M10 Mark II and earlier models. However, the actual photo mode is still baked into that particular position. So if you program C1 to be aperture priority and your mode dial is in C1, no matter what else you do, that camera is going to be an aperture priority. Same thing for if you program C2 to be shutter priority, no matter what else you do, it's always going to be in shutter priority mode. Those things are going to be hard baked into those particular mode dial positions, just like P, A, S, and M. Now I have another related question from Joe McGrath about how to actually program the custom modes to the function buttons on the OM1. And that can be done, and I've actually made a video on that, but I probably need to clarify a few more things like I did here today for the EM5 and EM10. So look forward to that video to answer that question specifically. But that's all I have time for today. And if you guys like what I'm doing here and want to support the channel, you can always buy me a coffee or make a small donation. The links below there. Greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.